Blackfathom Deeps in a nutshell. Baron Aquanis. Click on the 3 Fathom stones in the area and kill the adds to enable the boss. Keep in mind that during the encounter the boss is static. If anyone receives the debuff, they need to jump into a water and disengage from a group, as on expiry debuff knocks friendly targets away. The boss will cast Bubble Beam, a 10-second channel during which the boss will turn around and knock away any player in melee range that faces it. Make sure you stay behind the boss and rotate it. Ghamoo-Ra. Pull Ghamoo-Ra to the middle of the platform. Boss will start with Aqua Shell, which soaks 100 instances of a damage. As Aqua Shell breaks, bubble will fall around the platform. They can be soaked up for mana, but will also take damage, so be mindful of healers. On shell depletion, the boss will deal massive AoE damage, so make sure that Ride is topped up before that. Tanks need to swap every 2 stacks of crunch armor, as each of those reduces total armor by 25%. Lady Sarevess. The main tank should hold Lady, while the off tank should get the elite. All DPS should focus on the Lady and while available interrupt the Frost Arrow. The boss will also cast Freezing Arrow that applies a frost patch on the ground. Every player and the pet should leave the patch immediately, as it will fully freeze the target within seconds. Off tank can pull elite onto patch of frost to freeze it. While doing so, the tank has to make sure he's not standing on the patch himself. Gelihast. This boss has 3 phases, each triggering once you bring it to 10%. On phase 1, nuke the boss, while range should avoid Shadow Crush, a purple projectile that will hit the highlighted ground spots. During the interphase, avoid walking Murlocs while waiting for the boss to heal up. He won't receive any damage during that phase. Once boss heals up and enters phase 2, repeat the phase 1. Then he enters the interphase again. And in a phase 3, Shadow Crush now spawns Tentacle. You are safe to ignore them and nuke the boss down. Tanks should swap every 2 stacks of Shadow Strike, as it increases damage taken. Random player will receive a 4-second fear that is dispellable, and if possible you should place down a Tremor Totem. Lastly, a Curse of Blackfathom will be applied to a random player that builds up damage as it goes. It needs to be dispelled as soon as possible. Lorgus Jett. Nuke the adds and proceed through water walls until you reach the boss. Once you reach Jett, he will spawn one of 3 totems on rotation. Shield Totem apply Thorns effect to Jett that deals 200 damage to the attacker. Wind Fury Totem increase amount of Jett attacks. Molten Fury Totem summons a boulder that tracks player and deals damage to anyone it hits. During the fight, immediately swap to Lightning Shield Totem, as it deals massive damage, and ignore Wind Fury and Molten Fury Totem while dodging the boulder. Keep nuking Jett while swapping only for Shield Totem until the boss is taken down. Twilight Lord Kelris.
Who dares disturb my meditation?
Split the raid into melee and ranged groups. Melee group need to stand on max melee range from the boss. The ranged group should stack on 1 person and move during the fight together. On pull, boss will start casting Mind Blast, which should be interrupted whenever possible, and Shadow Chains, which must be interrupted as it can chain and kill people. 8 seconds after pulling, the 2 closest to the boss players will be debuffed with Sleep, and with that they will be sent to the Dream Realm. In there they must kill neutral priestesses. On death, they have a chance to spawn portal that players need to click to return to the boss fight. Once players leave, they are ineligible to receive the debuff again, and 2 new players should move close to the boss. Meanwhile, ranged group will be targeted with Shadow Crush. Similar to Gelihast, it will highlight on the ground. The group should sidestep together anytime it's flying toward them. It will leave purple smoke on the ground, so the group can't go back to where they stood and should move together in one direction. At 35%, the boss will enter second phase. He will no longer apply sleep debuff to the players. Melee should stack in pairs at max range away from the boss, as spread as possible from other pairs, and make sure to avoid chaining shadowy chains onto the tank. Range can now split, but if they get too close to the location of Shadowy Crush, they will receive the dot damage. At this phase, burn all CDs and nuke the boss as fast as possible. Shadow Protection Potion makes this phase significantly easier for the healers. Akumai. On pull, main tank should run to Akumai and tank it where it's standing. Everyone else should start attacking the boss but preserve long cooldowns for the last phase. During the fight, in phase 1 boss will cast Corrosive Blast and in phase 2 it will cast Void Blast. Both abilities are Frontal Cone Breath that stacks damaging debuff. Once the boss starts casting either of those, step out of its front both melee and ranged as it have a very long range. At 50%, the boss will stop any damage with a 99% damage reduction buff until his transition is complete. Tanks should stack up to 3 to 4 stacks and drag the boss to one of cleansing pools to drop the stacks. Doing so will spawn adds that need to be nuked down. You can also opt in to stack one tank until he dies and use off tank to pull afterwards. If you have enough damage, you can burn through the fight before the both tanks go down without spawning the adds.